Welcome to lesson 2 of week 4 of Julia Programming for Nervous Beginners, in which we take the words in a text file, we obtain and manipulate them. So our objective is to read a text file, to extract the words only and manipulate them. After this lesson, you should be able to depunctuate a text file line by line, to turn a file of depunctuated text strings into a file of words, and then to count various phrases and words in your file of words. So, let's recall that we have we've used filter bang. We've opened and read Pride and Prejudice extract. We've created a variable called pride lines, which is the read lines, and we've closed it. And then we've used filter bang to get rid of the empty lines. Okay, we can go back to what we've had before. And we'll open it. We will call it pride lines. And we'll close it. And we'll filter bang. This is just pride lines. And then we are at this position. So it's a good habit to work on small pieces of data when you develop code. Of course, on this course, we want to take small steps and leave nothing out. So we have so far only got as far as reading the file and getting it into lines with no blank lines. So instead of trying to do the whole file at once, let's try to depunctuate just a single line. For instance, let's try and use line 10. So our sample line is equal to pride lines 10. Okay, and we see that there's quite a bit of punctuation here. There's the start of a quote. You can see that the double quote is slightly different from the quote mark here. This is actually a left double quote, and that's a right double quote. That is a neutral, not left or right double quote. And there's a comma, there's a full stop, there's another comma. And character by character, we can call it sample chars is just x for x in sample line. So if we want to, an easy character to work on would be the full stop. Let's go back to the line. There's a single full stop. And the test, x equals, the full stop character is true when it's a local name inside the comprehension, or inside the filter. When the local name x is bound to the value full stop. We might say when x is a full stop. So when the value of x in sample chars is a full stop, then it works. So if we filter that x is not equal to a full stop in sample chars, we'll get all the characters except the full stop. But then the result is an array like this. We want to put it together back into a string, so we want to join it up. And so our full code is join filter bang x2 and so on. So let's write that out. We join and we have filter bang on sample chars. Let me get my spelling right. And I have to specify the function So x must be true for everything except when x, the value must be true except when x is the full stop. Let's just check that it is the same. So if x is not the full stop, correct. Oh, it thinks that I am missing something. So let's see. Oh, there's a comma that is missing. So here is the test function. Here. And here is the array. We filter bang on the array, we join. And we see that the full stop has indeed disappeared. We can filter out the commas as well with a different logical expression. So if x is a comma, then we don't want it either. Now you see the commas have disappeared, but there is still the quote marks. And of course, in other lines, there are other punctuation marks than just these ones in this line. Okay, so suppose we want to remove the double quote characters. But how do we know how to actually specify them? So if we take sample chars at 1, we see that this is a Unicode character, and we know that we can access Unicode using this particular sort of syntax, but it's not familiar to us. We don't really want to do it on this course. So we can try to see whether we can pick it up by backslash some letters in a tab. And if we start with just the letters quo for quote, then we see that there's a quote DBL left and a quote DBL. This is quote double left and a quote double right. So let's see what quote double left is. And that is indeed exactly the same character as that one. And so we can now use that and put the other two filters in. So x equals the character that is slash quo double left, and the next one, so if this is, we don't want it if x is slash the character slash quote double right, complete it, and now we see that all of the punctuation have been stripped out. So that's success for this particular line. So keeping with the idea of not taking small steps, we now have this line. Now we need to scale up to the whole text. And there are two problems. The first is that there are several other marks to filter out. And the second is that we must iterate over all the lines. So we can iterate over all the lines, and we can use a loop starting with for line in pride lines, but we have a problem. Line is a local variable inside the loop. This is a for loop, it has local variables, and so therefore line is not visible outside the loop. But we want the results to be outside the loop. So the code we used here, which if we said line equal to this, so that we had the new line and it was good, then we would be in trouble. So what we want is to create an array. Now we can update an array. The array is created globally, but we update it inside. We use pushbang inside the loop to update the array. So there's a typo here. This should be something different. But we can use the ones that we have so far. So we start with dpunc lines, and we want that to be equal to an empty array. We don't care if it's type any, it could be type string, it could be type any. We can specify that it should be type string by just over here, just putting a string in front of the start of the square brackets. And then we have for line in pride lines. And now we want to do the one that we've had before. Let's call it new line again. New line is equal to join. And what do we join? We join filter bang. And now we have to have the x2. And the function is a set of conditions, and the function is false if any of them are true. So we have x is the full stop, or x is a comma, or x is, we want to make the equality test. X is the quote double left, or x, let's make a bit of space there, x is the character slash quote double right. Okay, so that's the test. What do we apply it to? We want to apply it to all the characters in line. So we'll just say x for x in line there. So it has to be an array because filter and filter bang work on arrays. So x for x in line. And then we need to push back the new line to the dpunc lines. So the receiving array is dpunc lines, and what it receives is new line. And I think then we are done. We just say end. And I've made a spelling mistake. I said pred lines, not pride lines. Well, now we can take a look at what dpunc lines look like. And we see that we still have underscores. We still have semicolons. There may be some colons. There's exclamation mark, and there's a question mark. So what we can do is, instead of running what we can do is we can create a new item called dpunc lines 2, and we can start with that empty. And then we can, instead of using pride lines, we can use depunct lines here, and then we can use depunct lines to here. And then we use a different filter. These have already been filtered out, so now we can use question mark, we can use exclamation mark, we can use colon, and we can use semicolon. So now we have everything filtered out except the underscores and also the apostrophe. So we'd go through the same process. We say depunct lines 3 is empty, and we will use as our input depunct lines 2, and we'll write to depunct lines 3, and we'll put in the underscore, and we'll put in the mark, and I think it's just as well to put to escape it. It's not always necessary in all systems, but I think it's a bit safer. And we run that, and now we can look at depunct lines 3, and we see Bennett's. We see that everything has been taken out as far as we can tell. So I want to use depunct lines as a variable name, so I'll call depunct lines. Now update that to depunct lines 3. I don't have to see the output. Okay, here's an alternative way to do it. We can actually write the whole test as one line. I did it in that way so that I could just modify the for loop very quickly. But here you can do your entire filter as one line. It shows you that in Julia, if you have an incomplete line, then you just continue on the next line until it becomes a completed line. And Julia will just read this line as going on, and until it gets comma, it still continues until here. That semicolon there probably doesn't actually help to suppress any output. Okay, so the single quote character may not be the best thing. We see that we have Bennett's here, and there's an I'm there. It might be better to actually, instead of just removing it, putting in a little space. That would mean that instead of removing the single quote character as over there, we stop and we don't remove it, and then finally we don't filter it. We use a loop where if we encounter it, we put in a space. So that we want to do something basically similar in the same way. So what we have now is an array of depunct lines. Each line is a string, and we can split it into words. For instance, we can say split depunct lines, the 10th element in the array, and we will split it using checking for empty spaces. That means it'll give us all the words in the array. And there are only 15 words. My dear Mr. Bennett said his lady to him. What we can now put all together into one large amount. So if we try split join depunct lines, so we'll just try to join all the depunct lines together. Now what we want to do is joining this together, and I want you particularly to look at the beginning. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, chapter 1. If we actually try to do it like that, then what we see is that there's a by, it's joined onto the Prejudice, and there's an Austen chapter and a one it. So what is happening here? This is a debugging, so we have to carefully check exactly what our data are doing. And what it's doing is it's taking this by and putting it onto the prejudice. It's taking the chapter and putting it onto the Austin. It's taking the it and putting it onto the one. So that is, at the end of every line, it's not putting in a space. That's because of the way we've done join by just doing it like this. This join just takes the strings in each line and puts them together with no spaces. We need to have a space in between. Remember that join allows us optionally to have a separator between all the lines. So what we need to do is this. And now we say Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and it all seems very good indeed, and here's the end. I actually haven't allocated it to a variable. That's Pride words. I don't need to see it again, so I can suppress the output. That's where we are. So if we want to remove not Mr. Bingley's name, because this will move and it will actually retain all the ands. So let's count all the ands then. Filter x to the function of when x is equal. Now let's do Mr. Bingley, why not? Bingley, and Mr. Bingley's, and we need to do that on Pride words. That happens 11 times. If we want to do it on and, we see that and happens 32 times. If we do it on the, it happens 44 times. If we do it on I, it happens 42 times. So in this particular piece of extract, I is actually less common than the. Was it? Yes. And it's even more interesting is we can look for a phrase like Mr. Bennet or Mrs. Bennet. But now our problem is that Pride words does not contain phrases, only words. So we need a different approach. We need to be able to put words together in a phrase. We cannot simply use word for Pride words to do that because it doesn't tell us what the next or the previous word was. So what we do instead is we use a range. And we simply count the number of times that something happens. So we initialize count and we initialize number words. So count is equal to 0. Number words is equal to the number of words in Pride words. Okay. It doesn't want me to assign the variable, so we'll just call it W count. And then we'll have a for loop from 1, and we'll go to words, number words, the one before the end, because we want to combine the current word number with the one after it. So Pride words, the range of words in Pride words from word number to word number 1, we want to combine them by using join. And of course we want to keep a space because we're looking for a phrase of 2 words, so there must be a space. And then if that's equal to Mrs. Bennet, then we increase the global value of the count. So for, I'm saying word number, it's usually we use a shorter variable for the index of a range in this way, because it does become a bit long-winded to number words. If And now I need to construct the phrase. So it's join, and it's drawn out of pride words. So it's pride words, and it's from word no, where it is? It's from word number minus, so word number to word number plus 1. Just check that, indeed. And we want to make sure there's a space between them. And if that phrase is equal to the string Mrs. Bennett, then we want to update W count by 1. And of course, this is a global variable that we want to update, not some local variable. And I'm going to indent that, because that's inside the if loop, the if structure. So I'll end that, and then I'll end the for loop. And no, it doesn't. This is an interesting one. It was trying to index it at 164, but there's only 653 elements. So what is the problem? It went too far. And that is because I went to all the words, but I should go to one fewer, because and now I can see what the value of W count is. And that's Mrs. Bennett occurs 6 times. Mr. Bennett occurs 17 times. And in fact, because of the apostrophe, I am sorry. It's a total of 18. I had Mrs. Bennett as 6. I should have set W count equals 0, and then I can ask for the number of times Mr. Bennett occurs, and that is 11 times. And then I can ask, I said W count equals 0 again, and then I can ask for the number of times Mr. Bennett's occurs. And that is 1. And that is in the entire extract from Pride and Prejudice that we have. Okay, so let's review this lesson. You can use filter-bang with test functions like the output, the input is x, then the output is that if x is equal to a full stop, then the output is false. And that allows us to filter out punctuation line by line, and from an array of strings, we can from an array of strings containing words only, we can form an array of words just with one line of strip and join. And that once we have an array of words, we can easily count given words and given phrases. And that is the end of lesson 2. Thank you very much.